Hello and welcome to today's POCACITO web talk. Post-Carbon Cities of Tomorrow is an initiative by the Ecologic Institute, a nonprofit research institute in Washington, D.C. My name is Max Grunig, Ecologic, and for having the support of the European Union. We're very to have been running it already for quite a few years now, connecting sustainability practitioners in the United States with practitioners in Europe in many cities. And that's also the direct link to our speaker today. I'm excited to have here with us Øystein Leonardsen from Copenhagen, Denmark, speaking about the power of communities, about community building in South Harbour. And he was actually with the POCACITO program 3 years, is it already? Almost 3 years ago in 2016, traveling with us to 3 cities in the United States, to Detroit, to Memphis and Minneapolis, very exciting places, very diverse places too. And he's done, of course, a lot more than that. It's not that he only travels the US with us, but Øystein has a long career in driving the global transition. He's a business district manager. He's more than 25 years of experience on promoting and implementing sustainability, and is working with disadvantaged areas in Copenhagen. He is really an expert on how to energize community, how to make change sustainable, meaning also long-lasting. I think it will be really interesting to hear from Øystein. I have to say thank you for making it possible to join us. I know it's a little bit later already for you, although the difference in the switch to daylight saving time makes it that you only have a 5-hour difference to the East Coast today. So it's a huge benefit. Our other European presenters have to stay up even longer than that. And last week we had our presenter from Manila, and that was really, really late. So that was 10 p.m. their time when they presented. Øystein, thank you so much for joining us. As always, everybody who joined, we're very excited to have you here. I know many questions. You can ask your questions in 3 different ways. There's a chat function, there's a questions function, and there's also a function where you can click to raise your hand. I will try to have an eye on this, and I will, of course, try to get as many questions up and answered then by Øystein as possible. We'll do what we can, and in order for this to really now start, I'll be quiet and hand over to Øystein. Thank you for joining us here today. Thank you for presenting, and start the web talk. Thank you.
Well, thank you, Max. It's a real pleasure and honor to be presenting here today, and I was really very excited and inspired by your work in the US, and that I had the chance to meet people in the US 3 years ago, which actually in many respects I have taken with me. As you said, I have been working with disadvantaged urban projects for not 25 years, just 11 years, but I have been working with the transition, the mitigation agenda for more than 25 years. Maybe I should start talking a little bit about what integrated urban renewal is, and how we do that in Copenhagen. I don't know if you can see the slides, but I'm starting them now.
Yes, we can see them. Thank you.
Perfect. And integrated urban renewal is very much about people and about relations. It's about connecting the local community and creating what you could call commons. One of the ways, now it won't, is to engage people very concretely in building social relations. Also having the conversation at street level. Here we are discussing how a new urban space based on principles of mitigation, climate adaptation, and circular economy could be developed. South Harbour is an very diverse community in Copenhagen, and when you look at it, some of it, of course, looks, depending on where you come from in the world, but it maybe looks a little bit sort of worn out. And what we're doing is basically going through a process of what we call asset-based community development, meaning instead of just looking at what's wrong and what's not possible, then go through the community, have the conversation, what are the assets, what are the dreams, what do they want? And one of the things that we noticed is that there's aspiration in the community about the climate issue. And what we also noticed was that social relations and social coherence was things that really mattered to people, but also that it's a neighborhood that has a very long tradition and a very strong feeling about circular economy, basically because they are poor, and poor people have to recycle, they have to go to thrift shop. That was actually problematized when we arrived, but turning it around and saying, actually, you are doing much better than the rest of the world, and you could make an example to be followed that also creates a pride in the community. But it's not only about engaging the local people, it's also about reaching out to the world and like POCACITO, being engaged in European and global networks. And one of the assets of our neighborhood is that we have a university in the midst. And that's where the living lab idea came, that we could actually utilize that we had a university just around the corner, that they could bring something back to the community, that they, with experimenting with design, could show not only the community but also the world how things could be changed, like an old industrial plot, which, as you can see, was completely abandoned. And with the students, with the university, and with the thinking of the circular economy, became a complete different scene with arts and with manufacturing and with parties and yeah, a lot of engagement. In the neighborhood, we also have a waste management plot, which now called the Gold Mine, gives local designers, local NGOs the possibility to actually turn trash into new products. So last year we took it to another level. We had 3 very innovative entrepreneurs competing in a context of creating new circular economy companies, and they are now on their way to establish new shops and new job opportunities within the circular economy in the neighborhood. And right now we are here together with the local actors discussing how can we not only make circular economy, make the transition while we're there, but also anchoring it for the future, that South Harbour can continue on the road on mitigation and maybe not save the world, but at least be a part of the solution. Thank you.
Thank you, Øystein. That was a very good run through of what you're doing. I think probably there's a lot of questions as to maybe go into more detail on some of the pictures, like here on this one, for example. It looks like there's some maybe heat flow or energy flow on with the greenhouse, or is that something else?
Yes, the upper right corner, that is, they call themselves 03, meaning that they will have zero emission, that there will be zero waste, and that there will be zero transport.
Wow.
Yeah, together with the local school, what you see is a greenhouse that is supplied with energy from organic waste from the community, and the produce will be sold locally. So you actually have here a production system that is self-sustained and that lives within the neighborhood, and it's run and built by local resources.
Wow, excellent, excellent. I wish we could have this pop up everywhere. I mean, it's such a phenomenal concept to not just look at resources or not just look at mobility, but everything together.
Mm.
Now let's go back to the very beginning. You said first you wanted to know what people want, what people need and want in that community, and you said also it's a poor or disadvantaged community. So
Yes.
so did you get like basically a consensus response, or was there a lot of very diverging wants and needs, or how did you deal with, did you get also maybe people to speak who are not usually the loudest, right? I mean, there's always difference between people who always say, hello, I want to say what I think, and then there's people who are rather quiet.
Well, I think, the neighborhood is as diverse as I would say anywhere with people. Of course, there are in a deprived neighborhood, there are definitely more poor people than in the city as such. And also more people with disabilities or disadvantages of different kinds, whether it's psychological or physically, or abuses of sorts, and people outside the work market. But apart from that, they are people. And I think that if you look at people as what they are, human beings, and not as categories, as you are unemployed, or you are a consumer, or you are, but look at people as human beings, and approach them as human beings. A lot of these stereotypes and a lot of these barriers for dialogue, they disappear.
So
what we, yeah, I would continue just to say that I think very important is that we have the conversation where people are. We don't invite people to meetings. We go to we create meetings where people are, like here in the street, where we have a workshop, or in the upper right corner here, we made a pop-up cafe. And it is furnitured by the local thrift shop. And it's the citizens themselves that brought the coffee. we were discussing how can we create a better urban life, and everybody was looking, and somebody should do something. And then we said, well, why don't we do something and make a pop-up cafe?
Yeah.
And have the conversation what to do right there.
That's wonderful. Not waiting for people to come to you, but going out to meeting them. Still, you mentioned barriers. So since you're a little bit coming to the end of your project activity, the active in that South Harbour neighborhood, what would you say from your perspective, with having worked there over a few years, what are the main challenges, or where the main challenges? Maybe also what happened for you and your colleagues in terms of a learning process, where you, like, were there any assumptions you had at the beginning, and then you were there and you worked there and you realized, oh, well, this is actually how it is. And where you think now, okay, we learned this, we're now we know more.
I didn't get the last, that disappeared in static.
Oh, yeah, sorry. No, if you learned anything, like lessons learned from your project work there.
Well, one lesson learned is that it takes time. That social relations is more complex and more difficult to build than houses. That refurbish physically is actually rather easy compared to refurbish the community or to create commons. Having people to build trust, like when we are working, let's see, like this, not only being able to express their aspirations, but actually to turn these aspirations into to concrete actions. I would say that's one of the barriers, and one of the things that we have learned very much about keeping it at street level, so to speak. That not having ambitions that cannot be that the community cannot themselves see themselves in.
Great. So takes more time than simple physical investments. I think it's a great lesson, because very often, of course, when you have funding for projects, everything is about how soon can we get basically improved metrics within a year time frame, because budgets are usually year by year, and it's a lot of pressure on maybe going then for rather easy solutions, such as building something, because you immediately have the change there. I think it's very interesting to see that the soft change is more time consuming, but also, what do you say?
Well, I mean, if at another completely another scale, but heralded by the US, the world has tried to sort of bomb democracy into the heads of Syria, Afghanistan, etc. And somehow it haven't succeeded. You can win the war, but the peace, that's really something different. And of course, it's a complete different scale. But the principles is a little bit the same. We can come with all our knowledge. We can come with all our we can come with new pavement, or with new windows, but we cannot win the hearts of the people by just giving them the physics. That's the
Right.
hearts are won by something else.
Right. And we see that a lot when we have cities that maybe build, new bike infrastructure or new sidewalks, and they think, it's just falling out of the sky, and they think that then makes a livable city overnight. Whereas the pictures that you showed us, they're not necessarily showing anything that we would consider like fancy street design, fancy urban design, like where you have the newest new of the, urban planning community, what people have maybe on their wish list. Everything looks a little bit like, without trying to criticize, but a little improvised, a little like homemade, but it looks like alive. So that's probably a huge difference. It's with the people, for the people, and it's very appealing. But I guess, was there a challenge to get policymakers, politicians behind such an approach?
Well, we have been working with this with this way of urban renewal in Copenhagen for the last 20 years. So it's sort of a mainstream. But yes, we are constantly challenged that is this quality? Is this really making any difference? Shouldn't we build something new and flashy? But at the same time, when you see new neighborhoods built on old industrial areas, what people says within a few years is that it is empty of life. It has no heart. It has no authenticity. And that's actually what we are producing. That's all what really matters to people.
Right, right, right. So now let's look at the community, the people who live there. I mean, very often what we observe in places that get better, where the community is improving, we very often have the problem. I mean, if you go to the very first or a few pages further, where you have the little shops at the bottom, or even here, yeah, this one. So these three at the bottom, and or also this kiosk, very often when we have community improvement in many places, we see then what we can summarize maybe as gentrification, but we see then, we see the fancy coffee shops coming in, the yoga
Yeah.
studio, we see all that moving in, and all these people moving out. How do you react to that? How do you keep this from happening?
I think it's not something that you can actually you cannot combat it. When you make changes, change happens. So combating gentrification, combating social change, I think that's a lost combat. What you can do is embrace it. When we have talked, when we made the retail strategy, one of the things that we emphasized was that there should also be a low price market, so to speak, meaning that when you want to open a cafe, you also should consider having a cheap cup of coffee. Also, that when we're talking about circular economy, all of the new shops, they are, of course, they also bring in new material. It's not that it's totally only have to be recycled. But what we saw here somewhere here, is local designers, local carpenters, etc., that are producing interiors for the new shops and the new cafes. So also by sort of instead of signaling this is only for the rich and the posh, because it's locally produced, it's also sort of is a local invitation.
Great. So now coming to the difference or the relationship between the new businesses and the community. First, if you go to that page before, I think with these three startups, or before that, or was it even before, where you have the mushrooms? Yeah, here. So maybe you can just very quickly walk us through. You said there are three companies that were founded there who focus on the circular economy. And of course, given that circular economy is really our focus for this year, maybe you can tell us a little bit. It looks very interesting. They certainly do something with vegetables and plants, but what exactly are they doing?
Well, there was I talked earlier on 03, which is a closed loop system where the farm at the school is locally energized, meaning that it's produced biogas from organic waste from the community, which some of the residue also is nutrition for growing, and that the produce returns to the community. So really very much about constructing a closed loop. And it is built of the greenhouse, the production system is also renewed old containers, other stuff that is giving a second life. Excellent. The other project is which is also urban farming, is urban farming on a rooftop. We hope that they're about to establish, and when they have been established this summer, we hope it will probably be Europe's largest rooftop garden or urban garden. Yeah. And again, all of the production materials will be made, as you can see on the upper left corner. The growing system, everything is upcycled from the waste system. So a lot of it is about sort of taking things that is considered unuseful and reuse it in a new and different way. Thirdly, and I don't have pictures of it, I didn't bring pictures here, is a repair app. When a lot of many people, myself included, is not very handy, and if my computer breaks down, or my phone breaks down, or my chair breaks down, I really don't know what to do. And if I go to the shops, they will just say buy something new. So they try sort of and in our neighborhood, there's a lot of people that's actually very good with their hands and has these abilities that I don't have. But how do we connect? So they're trying to construct an app to connect people that can repair with people with a repair need.
Excellent. And now you already talked a little bit about the role of the people in the community, or who've been there before change. Mm-hmm. So what would you think, how was the reactions of the old residents or the incumbent residents towards the startups and the change happening? Because you mentioned also earlier, you can't combat change, you have to embrace it. But still, what I mean, I find this a lot, that initially people very often oppose change. They're scared about change happening. They're worried about losing more than they see the opportunity of winning something. In many cases, I'm not saying this for everybody, but how did you work with that, and how was that in your case with the local community?
You're absolutely right. That's a normal human reaction, that you are much more worried about what you can lose compared to your to the energy that winning something. Well, of course, yes, we have, and it is still there. I would be a lie if I said that, oh, everything went smooth and everybody was happy, and we put something in the water and then they forgot. I wish I could put something in the water, but I can't. I won't. No, that's where that's really where this is about the conversation. There's a huge difference between having a conversation like this one, or like here, than if you have a town hall meeting. Even this is to some people a barrier to participate in workshops and meetings like this. So that's the real, to us, really a lot of it is about mixed methods. There's no one method that works for everybody. Some people want the conversation on one-to-one. Some can do it in an auditorium. Some want it in the street. So all of this, and also using social media like Facebook and so on, Instagram, having all of these methods combined. And sometimes I call myself the coffee diplomat, that I walk around and talk and drink a lot of coffee with people, hearing what they want about their worries, listening to what could be common ground. A lot of footwork, basically.
Great. And just to see, so you said it's so important to be in the community and to go to meet people. So did you also have an office, or was your office in South Harbour, or how did this work for your work?
Yes. Well, we haven't left the stadium yet. We are leaving during this year.
Great.
But yes, I think it's paramount that we are situated locally. That people see us in the street every day. That you can just drop in, have a coffee at our office. All of these small informal conversations is really important. If you study innovation, a lot of research has shown that the most innovative spot in any office is the coffee machine or the water cooler. That's where people have they meet, and they didn't know that they had a meeting, and then suddenly a new idea turns up. When we're talking about being place-based, it's also about creating the unusual meeting or the unexpected meeting. Normally, in our everyday life, we all we work with people that work with the same. So teachers, they meet teachers. Bankers, they meet bankers. Scholars meet scholars, etc. And they sort of don't see that they also live in a community that has a diversity of professions and experiences. And that's really about that's really the point of being place-based, that you can construct these unexpected meetings where suddenly a scholar is sitting next to a banker, sitting next to a teacher, sitting next to an unemployed. And there they can see each other, they can understand each other, and innovative and new ideas can arise.
Excellent. So from what you told us, so you really had an open door and people could walk in without an appointment and just
Yes.
talk to you. That's
Yeah. Well, we of course we're not that and I'm happy that we don't make a lot of numbering and putting and use our time to document what we're doing and instead of just doing things. But as sort of an example, I have somewhere between 850 and 1100 one-to-one conversations through a year with local actors of all kinds.
That's a lot. That's a lot,
That's
definitely.
a lot. Well, if you break it down, it's somewhere between 5 and 8 during a day, and that's really not that. I didn't think of that as many. I just pick up the phone. I talk to people when I walk out the door. I have all of these small conversations, but if you sum them up, it's actually quite a lot of conversation through a year. And I couldn't have that if I was sitting in an office somewhere.
Right.
Far away.
No, that's very different from sitting like in City Hall or
Yes.
you know in having locked doors and maybe having speaking hours a few times per week only, if at all. So there's a huge difference. Was there anything like with your staff, your colleagues? Was everybody excited about this from the beginning, or was there some people who thought that's maybe going a little bit too far?
No, I think this kind of work attract people who wants to be in a dialogue, in a conversation with reality, and wants to sort of engage themselves. If you could say anything in that respect, is that you can get over engaged, and that it goes from having a professional to a personal. If something don't work, it's not because it didn't work, but because you didn't perform well enough. We do face these kind of stress situations, but in general, people working in integrated urban renewal is really engaged and committed for the change they can bring to a community.
And that's something you mentioned there that's you know, you find this a lot also in nonprofits where people get too involved, where it's almost not healthy anymore, where they lose the boundary and then they don't stop working, basically.
Yes, I would say that's really that can be a problem. And you have to be open about it, and you have to be have sort of a system to take care of that. Another issue is that because we are very much oriented towards projects, lack of continuity can be also an issue. That we are funded for some years, and it's not always possible to ensure that the same person can take the obligation all the way, because then funding stops, or when you are on a short contract, you are looking for new job opportunities. So discontinuity can also be an issue.
Right, and you mentioned the anchoring earlier. Maybe you can expand a little bit more, because that's obviously it's a common challenge everywhere. People think in projects, budgets are limited, but how do you make it go further? And since you're coming towards the end of your activity there, this seems to be a priority now. Maybe you can tell us a bit more about that.
Yes, that was good cue to. Can we have the camera on?
Yeah.
We just published this one. It's actually fresh out of the box. It's been online for a few weeks, but now it's on. Now it's also in paper, and I suppose this was actually what initiated your invitation today, that we just published this. And this is a document where the actors themselves talk about how they are going to anchor these living labs, these projects that we have been part of initiating. And I'm not going to read out loud, at least not so much, but I would just, let's see where it is. Just showing, here we are, how we're trying sort of to construct an interrelated ecosystem between the social inclusion, between the circular economy and the energy mitigation, because, and that's also very important to us, highlighting who is actually participating, that you can recognize yourself and that you can see that you actually are interrelated. And that's about being place-based and constructing this unusual or unexpected meeting, that people that thought that they were only talking about circular economy also actually are talking about social inclusion and energy.
Excellent. Yeah, and Øystein is right. That was the spark that led me to ask him to talk today. And you can find, of course, the brochure for download on the page, on some page of the Copenhagen city government, and I don't know which one, but also on the POCACITO.org page, where you also then find information about today's webinar, but also the download of the brochure. So that's indeed a very interesting publication, and especially because, I mean, I still see a lot of this top-down thinking, both in minds and then in publications, but also in reality and projects. And this is really turning this upside down and opening it up, making what you mentioned at the very beginning, people the center, and people as people, and not in their roles with all their hats on, but as really a person. That's what really attracted me to this approach, and I think it's really a great job, I have to say. And I hope that you continue this definitely in other places.
Well, so do I. Actually, I don't know what I'm doing when this assignment stops after summer, but I'm quite confident that there will be new possibilities and new openings. There have been for the last 20 years, so probably there will be for the next as well.
Absolutely. I mean, that would have been my question, like, what's the next neighborhood? I imagine in Copenhagen there are other places where your work would be beneficial. Do you have a specific place in mind already?
No, well, yes, we do. We monitor the city on specific issues like unemployment, expected life expectancy, etc. And then we sort of make a short list of neighborhoods that are in need. And that short list we present to the city hall, so that it is city hall that makes the decision which neighborhood next. And there haven't been a selection yet. That will probably be in the fall. But that's very much a political discussion and priority. And any city has all kinds of needs: new schools, new roads, new whatever. So whether they will launch a new integrated urban renewal initiative this year or the year after, we don't know. Sometimes they skip a year, sometimes they launch two. That differs a little bit on budget situation. So
Of course, but that means you do already have ideas, and these are not
yes,
just ideas, but it's data driven, as you said.
yeah,
So
yeah,
that's also, I think, a very interesting approach, that it's not just because somebody thinks, oh, this looks like a field where we should go in, but it's actually, you have indicators and you look at the indicators, and then you make a proposal, and then in the end, of course, it's a political decision because somebody needs
yeah.
to put money on the table. So this is really exciting. And of course, beyond Copenhagen, I mean, we had you in the US in 2016. You actually came back in 2017, was it right, to
Hmm.
Minneapolis?
Yes,
And that, so we should definitely also bring you back here. I think there's a lot of work in the US to be done, and of course in other places too.
mm.
And one aspect that we haven't really touched upon that much, and it's also not maybe the core aspect of your work, but speaking of Copenhagen being, well, the city with the maybe the highest quality of living, but highly attractive,
Mm.
also a growing city. That's something we can see in many cities in the United States, in Europe. The attractive cities have
Mm.
increasing rents, and the cost of living is going up, making it very difficult for people such as in South Harbour to stay. Is there a way, and I know you said you can't fight change, you have to embrace change because you can't stop it from happening. Do you have strategies, or maybe not applied here, but maybe somewhere else for the future, how to work with this problem of ever increasing cost of living in the best places, meaning like the better a place gets, the more unaffordable it becomes? That's like the Joker question for the
Yeah.
end.
Well, I wish I could say sure. I tried sort of to hide behind the embracing. That sounded nice. Um, yes. Well, strategy number one is that actually Denmark got planning legislation some years ago, making it possible for the municipality to, in new developments, to demand 25% public housing. So which is not public in Denmark, social housing, you should say, because it's not publicly run, it's public supported, but it's private associations or NGOs that actually do build and run public housing in Denmark. 25% in all new developments, which means that it will be possible to ensure that 25% of the new building of the new constructions will be at least affordable to the middle class, because it still costs money to construct new things, but it's also a way that people that now are living maybe in a small flat, middle class family living in a small flat in a social housing association, they can move to a better flat in a new, and that means that their old flat will be vacant for a new small family, a new student or whatever. So that's one of the strategies, but also that having new job opportunities. And I think that circular economy, among other things, is actually offering blue-collar jobs that are disappearing. Maybe Richard Florida was right about the rise of the creative class, but we cannot all be creative, and we are not all artists and architects and engineers. Some of us needs to do something. He actually wrote about it in his latest book, that okay, maybe we went too far, and this is about affordable housing. This is about creating new workplaces, and I think the circular economy is one of the best places to do it. And also, when we're talking about refurbishment, it's not only about sort of improving the quality of the housing, but also reducing rent. In the Living Lab that we have been working on energy, we are now trying to implement the first examples of energy communities in Denmark. And that's actually more about saving money, of course, as well as energy, and transform from black energy to green energy, saving money, which means that we are decreasing the cost of living.
Well, that's excellent, and I really like the emphasis you put there on actually bringing back in the circular economy and saying, well, there are, of course, real opportunities if we recycle, if we reuse, if we upcycle, and some of it is for the people who come up with the ideas, of course, what you could call creative class. But of course, we also, I mean, I find this really like a very difficult term anyway, creative class, because it's this class thinking in there. But if we say, okay, but we also need to have people who do this with their hands, and a lot of this is not currently, at least, possible to be done by robots and machines, but you actually have to open the computer to replace parts or to take it apart. And so this is really a huge opportunity. And this brings us back to where we are in the US, where it's really, really difficult at the moment, where we have decreasing recycling rates, but where it also shows us that the model, how we do recycling in the US, a lot is like we collect items locally, but we don't recycle it locally. It gets shipped, and it's a global market for recycling goods, and the global market imploded, which tells us, I think, exactly that we need to focus back on the local and keep things, what you said, 0-3. I love this. So when you also don't ship things, because what does it mean if you recycle your electronics, but you do this in China? I mean, that means you ship it from here to China, it gets recycled, maybe it comes back here. That's not what we want.
No.
So this is really, really very innovative and really groundbreaking. And I think, I hope you can foster a lot more of this local. So we have not just the resources, not just the energy is local and zero, but also you have no transport. And it has so many benefits. Like we talk about this so much currently in European cities, but not only there with the air quality. We had a conversation last week about the health impacts of air pollution in cities. And of course, in Asia, it's even worse. And how much we can actually gain if we reduce car traffic, right? And truck traffic. Yeah. And it's about the people. And you show it here on this slide. People are in the streets. We don't see a car on this whole slide here. Oh, well, we see in the background, they're parked cars. Yeah. So they're still there. They're not banned, but you see a lot of people. I think that's where we should aim for. I really applaud you for the work you have done there. I hope you start doing this in other places. And of course, I hope we can bring this to other countries as well. And I include in that also other European countries, because there's a lot of change work needed. We see that, of course, in a lot of communities, like coal communities where we have the coal phase out now. We see this also in industrial communities where the jobs are gone, maybe in the Rust Belt in Europe. And we see that, of course, in the US as well. So I hope you will have a lot of energy to go to many different places. We're almost at the end of our time here. We always set the maximum at 60 minutes. We're almost there. We need to maybe wrap this up. It's not so easy to say we solved everything, we talked about everything, but we talked about a lot of things a little bit. I hope we can continue the conversation. I also want to invite all the participants who were online here with us to send follow-up questions to Øystein or to me. And also remember, there's online fora if you want to use these to discuss with Øystein, with me and other people. We have Facebook, we have a group on LinkedIn. And of course, you can also just simply email us. Øystein, if you want to pitch something last minute, you can do this now.
Well, maybe some sort of you asked what are the learnings? What is important here? Well, people is important, relations is important, and it takes time to produce trust and confidence between people. So place-based development, look at the assets, listen to the dreams, look at anchoring institution locally, meaning institutions like universities and other that is dependent on their community, and drink a lot of coffee.
Thank you. That's a great recommendation. So that's something I think we can start with immediately. And of course, depending on where you are, maybe it's already too late for coffee. Øystein, thank you so much for joining us today. Thank you for presenting your work in South Harbour. It was really fascinating. We'll be in touch. And thank you, everybody. We'll send around announcement for next webinar soon. I don't have anything in the pipeline for right now. So I say thank you very much, and have a great rest of your day, be it the evening as in Copenhagen, or it's about lunchtime here in the US, so on the East Coast. And for the people in California, it's maybe time for coffee in the mid-morning. Have a great rest of your day. Take care and see you soon. Bye-bye.
See you soon. Bye.